The night was supposed to be quiet at St. Mercy's Hospital, the kind of calm that follows a long storm. But as the clock struck 2:37 a.m., the silence shattered under the deafening roar of engines. One after another, nearly 100 motorcycles tore through the parking lot, their headlights slicing through the darkness like blazing swords. Nurses peered through the blinds, hearts pounding, as 97 bikers in black leather vests flooded the hospital entrance. The emblem on their backs gleamed under the fluorescent lights, Steel Wolves MC. What they came for wasn't revenge, it was protection. And the person they were here to protect was a terrified little girl lying alone in room 204. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in standing up for the helpless, then please take a moment right now, like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Because what you're about to hear will remind you that not all heroes wear badges or capes. Some ride Harleys and carry scars instead of medals. Her name was Lily. She was only 12, but her eyes looked older. The kind of eyes that had seen too much pain, too much fear. For weeks, she had been in that hospital bed recovering from injuries no child should ever bear. The doctors said she had fallen down the stairs, but the bruises on her arms told a darker story. The truth was simple and horrifying. Her stepfather had hurt her again. Her mother was gone, and there was no one left to fight for her. No one until fate led her to a man named Hawk. Hawk was the president of the Steel Wolves Motorcycle Club, a man whose silver hair and scarred cheek made him look like someone carved from the storms of life. Once, Hawk had been a lost soul, a biker with a temper, a criminal record, and regrets that could fill an ocean. But that changed the night he found a crying girl sitting outside a diner, her hospital wristband still on, clutching a stuffed bear. That girl was Lily. He didn't ask questions that night. He just wrapped his leather jacket around her shoulders and told her she was safe. But when Lily told him what her stepfather had done, and that the man was coming to the hospital to take her home again, Hawk's blood turned cold. That night, he made a call that would shock everyone in town. The next morning, the small town of Hollow Creek woke to the thunderous growl of engines. The Steel Wolves were coming, not for violence, but for justice. 97 bikers, each with a past that society had judged too harshly, now gathered for a single purpose, to protect one frightened child. They weren't saints, but they knew what it meant to be broken. They had seen evil in the world, and they refused to let it touch her again. The hospital staff tried to keep calm as the group lined the hallways, standing shoulder to shoulder. Some wore patches reading Brothers for Life. Others carried gifts, stuffed animals, flowers, candy bars, anything that might make a scared little girl smile. Hawk led them, his boots echoing down the corridor like thunder in a church. His scarred face softened when he reached Lily's room. She looked up at him, her tiny hands trembling, but when she saw the Steel Wolves patch, she whispered, "You came," and Hawk simply nodded. The nurses watched from the doorway as Hawk knelt beside her bed. He told her she didn't have to be afraid anymore. "No one's gonna hurt you while we're here," he said quietly, his voice rough like gravel but warm with promise. For the first time in days, Lily smiled. It was faint, fragile, like sunlight breaking through a storm, but it was there. That peace didn't last long. Outside, the sliding glass doors hissed open. A man in a dark coat stormed into the lobby, shouting Lily's name. The stepfather. His voice carried the arrogance of someone used to being obeyed, the fury of a man who believed he still had control. But what he didn't expect was a wall of leather and steel standing between him and his victim. 97 bikers turned in unison, their eyes burning with silent warning. The man froze. Hawk stepped forward, calm but cold, his shadow falling over him like a storm cloud. The air grew heavy with unspoken threat, not violence but power. The stepfather demanded to see Lily, waving some papers, and shouting that she was his responsibility. Hawk didn't raise his voice. He simply said, "Not tonight." And when the man tried to push forward, 2 bikers stepped in front of him, unflinching. The hospital security arrived seconds later, followed by police officers. But before anyone could act, the stepfather's mask slipped, and his rage erupted in front of everyone. The shouting, the threats, the lies, all of it came spilling out, loud enough for the officers to hear every word. And that was all it took. Within minutes, the police were reading him his rights. The man who thought he owned that little girl was led away in handcuffs, his voice echoing down the sterile hallway. Lily saw it all through the doorway the moment her nightmare finally ended. She began to cry, not out of fear this time, but relief. Hawk turned and saw her trembling hands covering her face, and he gently placed his scarred hand on her shoulder. "You're safe now, kid," he said softly. That night, the hospital became a fortress of hope. The bikers took shifts outside Lily's room, ensuring no one came near her. The nurses brought them coffee. The bikers fixed a nurse's car that wouldn't start. By morning, what had begun as chaos had turned into something almost sacred. A community built on compassion. Hawk sat by Lily's bedside as she slept, his weathered hands folded in silence. He thought of his own daughter, whom he'd lost years ago to a drunk driver. He had failed to save her, and that pain had driven him to the edge. But now, looking at Lily, he felt something stir inside him. The kind of redemption a man rarely gets twice in a lifetime. When she woke, she whispered, "Will you still be here tomorrow?" Hawk smiled faintly. "As long as you need us." And the Steel Wolves kept that promise. They visited every day, bringing her food, toys, and stories about the open road. They didn't talk about violence or revenge. They talked about courage, about healing, about starting over. And for Lily, those rough, tattooed men became the family she had never known. Weeks later, when Lily was discharged, the hospital parking lot looked like a festival. 97 bikes lined up under the sun, polished to shine like mirrors. The town had gathered too. People who once feared the Steel Wolves now stood applauding them. Lily stepped out in her new denim jacket, one gifted to her by Hawk himself, with a small patch on the back that read "Steel Wolves, little sister." As she hugged him goodbye, she said, "You saved me." He shook his head. "Nah, kid, you saved us." For men who had spent their lives on the edge of the law, being called heroes felt strange. But that day, it fit. They didn't storm a hospital for glory or headlines. They did it because sometimes the world forgets that real strength isn't about fists or fear. It's about standing up when someone else can't. A month later, Lily was placed with a loving foster family who lived just outside Hollow Creek. She visited the biker clubhouse often, where she learned to ride a small dirt bike, her laughter echoing through the hills. Hawk watched from the porch, proud and quiet, knowing that somewhere in his broken soul a light had been rekindled. The news spread quickly across the internet. 97 bikers protect little girl from abusive stepfather. Millions watched, cried, and shared. But for those who were there, it wasn't about fame. It was about a promise kept, a life saved, and a family found in the most unlikely place. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness still exists, that even the toughest hearts can protect the softest souls, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Because every time you do, you help stories like Lily's remind the world that love is stronger than fear, and compassion can ride faster than hate. Special request, comment below what this story meant to you. Do you believe people deserve second chances? Even those who've made mistakes, when they choose to do something good? Your words might inspire someone who's lost faith in humanity. That night at St. Mercy's Hospital, 97 engines roared, not in anger, but in unity. And in that sound, that thunder of redemption, a little girl found safety, a broken man found peace, and a brotherhood once feared found its purpose again. Because sometimes, heroes don't fly in capes. They ride in leather, carrying scars and hearts big enough to shield the innocent.